So today, the first day of summer 2025, we're going to finish our subject matter on the falling away, which we had started last week. And the reason that we're talking about the falling away, just to remind, is that it's a very significant prophecy. And I do think, if you want to understand end time prophecy, you have to take it into consideration. I think most people, with what I call the Schofield prophecy, doesn't really have a falling away. It has a series of events that concludes history, but there isn't an actual falling away. There's always, some sort of church that's going. But when you look at, there's plenty of prophecies in the Old Testament, but there also are some in the New. But if all flesh is grass means the church is going to die. Okay, you have the prophecies in Joel that indicates in an abstract way that the church is going to die. I think it's either Malachi or the other one that begins with M in the Old Testament. Micah. I think he starts right off saying, I'm going to tell you something that you won't believe even though it happens. That means that the church is going to die.
Right.
Isaiah speaks over and over again. Every time Isaiah mentions the desolation, he's talking about the church dying. Like I said, this study is a basic prophecy study. So if we wanted to do an in-depth study on the falling away, then we would go to the curse and the law in Deuteronomy. We'd go into Isaiah. We would go into Jeremiah talking about it. Ezekiel talks about it. Joel talking about it, and we would explain every single detail. But I think what happens, if you're someone that happens to come across this video, you probably wouldn't want to spend, 10 hours on one little point. And then I think if we just don't teach these basic points, then I think people are persuaded to believe in Schofield's prophecies, and then they assume that they're all facts. So what we're trying to do on this series, which is going to be, we're going to be done in the next couple weeks, on the prophecy things, but we're giving a basic understanding of prophecy so that you can see that Schofield's prophecies are not entirely true while explaining the basic principles that are true. And so it's not just, the verses that we're quoting today. So we're quoting what I think is the easiest one to understand. So if you go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which we had looked up last week, but I just want to go over it again. This is where it's spoken simply, quickly, and directly. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, it says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." Okay, so we left off last week. So what we've been doing is talking about some social mores that have changed since 1967 that indicate a falling away. Although we did do a 4-part study explaining how the time of the how Gentiles have changed, which is basically the same thing as the falling away. But on the series Time of Gentiles Over, part 1, 2, 3, 4 is explaining the falling away in a general sense, and then we're just going over it just a little bit more in the specific prophetic sense of the falling away. So in my mind, the time of Gentiles ending and the falling away are kind of one and the same. Okay. Now, so this first question is kind of obvious, but it's good to take in perspective. Are people more addicted to drugs now or before 1967?
Yeah, I believe now. Yeah.
Right. They might have been more addicted to cigarettes before 67, but even so, that was a relatively short period of history. That might have been like a 30-year period, right?
Yeah, cigarettes take decades to kill you.
And people are addicted to drugs today. It's not just the drug addict that's homeless that does heroin. I think a lot of senior citizens are addicted to prescription drugs because of the doctors.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of people think that they need a drug for their memory. They think they need a drug for their if they're depressed.
Yeah.
They think they need a drug, to lose weight. They think they need a drug for their blood pressure. They need a drug for their cholesterol, or they're going to die. I think a lot of people believe they need drugs to survive because they don't believe that Jesus is the life, and they think that it needs to be manufactured through drugs, which destroys your health and destroys your body. I'm not saying it does in 100% of cases. Like,
Right.
strong believer in insulin. It definitely doesn't. Anyone that's got diabetes clearly needs insulin, right?
Right.
But I do think that we've overdone the use of drugs to the point where it's counterproductive in at least 80-90% of the cases.
And a lot of honest doctors would agree with that.
Right. With the exception of things like insulin that you need to survive, Like if you have high cholesterol, you're better off jogging, doing aerobic exercise, and eating healthy food than taking pills. If you're depressed, then you should go tell the people you care about that you love them, try to go on a trip, and try to do something to make yourself happy. We do more. I don't mean if you're totally messed up,
Right.
but like if you're diagnosed with bipolar, then maybe you need some sort of drug to not kill somebody. But if you're just simply in a negative mood, you shouldn't be taking drugs, in my opinion. Okay. So does our respect for elders, has that changed since before 67?
Yes, definitely gone. I think, there's more of the opposite. I think now there's like a huge animosity, but disregard for, the thoughts of elders.
I think people are now looking at getting old to be this big negative deficiency. So they're not valuing the wisdom. They're saying this is outdated, that's outdated.
Yeah.
So they believe that the thoughts of older people are outdated, the feelings of older people are outdated, the values of older people are outdated. So then as a result of that, they don't have respect for their elders. And then there's another problem that justifies it. Because the church age has ended, the elders themselves are not as noble as they were in the past too.
Right.
So you have people saying, what do you know? Your brain doesn't work anymore because you're old. And then also some of these old people have been married 2 or 3 times, and and they've been drug addicts as well.
Yeah.
So a combination of the values getting bad, and then societal's negative view on aging, has caused people to not respect their elders. Okay. Are people more depressed now, or are people more depressed before 67 or more depressed now?
Yeah, well, I don't see that there's a lot of happy people now. I don't see, clearly society was happier in the past.
Can you imagine, okay, you were born in 64.
Yeah.
Do you remember anyone then saying, I suffer from depression?
No. No.
Saying it's an illness, I can't control it, it's a chemical imbalance.
No.
And so the negativity of the fear culture has created a lot of depression, along with the fact that like women are out working, so they're not actually nurturing the kids and making the kids feel loved causes depression.
Right.
But then also by people valuing work so much, people don't care about each other as much, which also probably doesn't help with depression.
Right.
And then just years and years of greed and regulations and fears caused things to be more expensive. And so I can't help but think that maybe that causes a degree of depression.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're working really hard to take care of your family. You want them to love you and appreciate you and be close to you. And if that doesn't happen, it's very hard.
Right. The
No matter
median
who you
home here in New Hampshire is $550,000. That's a little bit depressing in itself, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they say 60. I don't know if this statistic is true or not, but I heard someone claim that 60% of Americans cannot afford an normal middle class lifestyle.
I believe that, absolutely.
Right. So the income inequality perhaps would create a degree of depression.
Definitely.
But also people putting their job over people creates depression.
Right.
People not be interested in children anymore can create depression. All the drugs people take, could be causing depression. The high cost of living, as we just got done mentioning, and the polarization of the different groups.
Yeah.
Like people won't talk to people because they're older. People won't talk to people because of the political divide. People won't talk to people because they're afraid to talk to strangers. People, and then too, it's like we used to be more of a community, but then now we have so many divisive differences of opinions that it makes it even more difficult for groups of people to get together, which then furthers the isolation. And I think the biggest cause of the depression is isolation. Is people's inability to converse with each other and their lack of desire to, and then it feeds on itself. So then we have this isolation culture that gets so ridiculous, then it doesn't feel normal after a while to talk to people. Like I don't really feel comfortable to go visit any of my neighbors here.
Right.
And it's not necessarily because of them. I mean, maybe the lady over here, it's because of her, but it's not that the neighbors are actually doing anything, but we have an isolation world.
It doesn't feel normal.
It doesn't, I feel like I'd be embarrassing myself if I go and try to welcome myself in to a stranger's house. Whereas I remember when I was a 5-year-old kid, it felt normal.
Yeah.
I remember this guy, Andy, that made this boat in his backyard. I don't know how I happened to go to his house, but he was probably your age, and he had a son that was, say, your older kid's age.
Yeah.
And they had this big, I don't know what you'd call it, but he had like this concrete pad. It's something you would have loved doing.
Yeah.
And he made this giant boat.
Yeah.
And it had like a metal frame that he put fiberglass over. So when it was done, you couldn't see the metal frame.
Right.
And this was just an old guy, and he showed me the boat, showed me how he's making it. I had another neighbor that bought the land beside ours, building a house, and he had a kid my age. And so me and the kid would play all day, and I occasionally work on the house while they're building the house.
Yeah.
And then we pretty much knew all of our neighbors. Now then you fast forward now, you'd almost feel like if you knocked on the old guy's door to visit,
what do you want?
Right.
I don't want anything. I just wanted to say hi.
I think in the 70s we were like dogs. Like a couple days ago, this dog desperately wanted us to play. So we were doing alligator crack in front of his house, and it's bark, 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 bark over and over again, saying, "I'm here, let's play."
Right.
And then I think that's how people used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we used to have people get together. We lived on Lemoyne Beach, but Lemoyne Beach was, a quarter of a mile in the ocean and a half a mile in land from my house. So then there'd be kids from different states that would come up in the summer.
Yeah.
And then we'd all get together at the beach.
Yeah.
And now it's, what if you're an ex-murderer?
Right.
Yeah. or if the kid is out of the parent's sight, the parents feel this is dangerous.
Right.
I was never around my parents' sight.
No.
Okay, has the falling away caused people to be more self-absorbed?
Yeah, people are preoccupied with, their job, their needs, their image, and anytime you're in this thing of the fears that we're talking about, like you are self-absorbed in that. What is this person's effect going to be on me? You're not thinking about what do they have needs? Can I help them? Do they need a friend? You're thinking about how is their presence going to negatively affect me?
Yeah, I think by the industrialization of the world caused people to work, and it did create a lot of convenient technologies. Like, I love central heating, as I say, it's my favorite invention. It's the only thing I love about being in the modern world is central heat, right? And central air is a distant second, but it's kind of a nice one as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens is you then focus on, if you were a plumber, you focus on heating systems all day long instead of people. Mm-hmm. In my case, I'm maintaining roads. So I have this unique perspective where half the year I get to focus on people, and then half the year I'm a workaholic like everybody else. So this half the year is my workaholic time of year. Right. So during the week, I'm focusing on the roads, the productivity, the customers, when they're going to pay, what parts I need to buy, how much work I can do, should I expand, should I not expand, etc., etc. All those things are normal, right? But you know what? It's not how the human experience was intended. It's not how God made us.
Right.
We were supposed to spend most of our time focusing on each other and finding the good in each other. So then you end up working all the time. It makes you, self-absorbed. And then the technology created this pop culture, which then got people that were popular got esteemed a lot more. Before pop culture, the most esteemed members of society were, well, actually there was a transition, okay. Just before pop culture, it was leaders and generals. But before that, it was prophets. Mm-hmm. That's why you have St. Paul's School, and you have towns like Herman's named after Mount Herman, and you have we have a town here in New Hampshire, Bethlehem. You got there was before the Industrial Revolution. I think the most esteemed people in a society was a saint, a biblical saint, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then from the time of World War I to the time of World War II, it was general, like you have the Eisenhower Interstate.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think since the time of Elvis to today, I think it was pretty much pop culture. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to see a street named after a singer than you would a general. Mm-hmm. But like in the past, it would be a biblical name. People name their kids after people in the Bible. Right. Like there was that girl name that you and I discovered when we first met at the Amish. I forgot was an Axe, and then they named their daughters Dorcas.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And it was like I never would have known the name Dorcas if they didn't name their daughter. Dorcas.
Yeah, my mother had a cousin Dorcas.
So now I think that so everyone wanting to be popular makes them more self-absorbed, because to be popular you got to focus on your image and how you come across and how you look to other people. Mm-hmm. And then I think just focusing on work makes you more self-absorbed inadvertently, just because you're not focusing on things that pertain to other people enough. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in marketing you might say, okay, people that write jingles, they might focus on other people. But for the most part, your work, is focused on self. And then even jobs that were selfless, with the greed culture, becomes less selfless. Like a teacher, for instance, is primarily focusing on the students. Mm-hmm. But then you got all the parents complaining about what they're doing, then they got to say, okay, I can't upset the parents. I got to do blank. So then it gets off the, like trying to overcome liability
Yeah,
issues makes you more self-absorbed.
absolutely.
I can't help you because I don't want to get sued.
Right. I have to join the teachers union so that I don't get sued. NEA is a requirement. You have to join NEA to be a teacher.
Right, yeah. So even like a teacher or a nurse who's pretty much the job itself was designed to focus on helping people has become more self-absorbed when you start to put like regulatory liability
Yeah.
issues into it. And I think now we are in a social mess of self-absorption, whereas if you go back in the church age, people were nowhere near as self-absorbed as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And final, we probably made this point before, but how do you view the state of marriages now versus 1967?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's a bad one because, marriage was like a solemn vow. It was a sacrament of the church, and it was very serious. And now it doesn't mean that at all. I mean, people are divorced probably. Yeah, I mean, the divorce rate is above 50% now, and I don't think people view marriage in any way to be a lifelong commitment. It might be, I need to get married to be on his insurance or her insurance. It's part of a monetary situation to have, a marriage, but it's not at all viewed to be a lifelong commitment.
Yeah, so people think if they're not happy, it's okay to get divorced.
Right.
If they find a better opportunity,
Right.
it's okay to get divorced.
Yeah.
If like in the 90s, often if a guy lost his money, the girl would divorce, or if the girl gained 15 pounds, the guy would divorce the girl.
Yeah.
And then after the bathroom break, I'm going to expound upon this and a relationship standard of how the falling away has created our approach to relationships differently.
Mm-hmm.
So one other thing I wanted to add on the falling away that I don't have in my notes that I just thought of a couple days ago is I think some of the breakdown of family values is based on social circumstance and training. Like, say a girl wants to be the greatest mother. If you compare, so if you took two girls that have the same desire and you put one of them in 1955 and one of them today, right? The one in 1955, probably at least 80 to 90% of her girlfriends that she grew up with would have the same desire. She would have a husband that would also be supportive of that desire. And then her grandmother would have done the same thing. So then if she wanted to go on a trip with her husband, then the neighbors could take care of her kids, or her mother, the kids' grandparents could. There was a community of people that supported this, and then she probably grew up, raising either helping raise neighborhood kids or older siblings' kids and other such things. And so she would have, and when families were closer, when cousins would come, she knew how to be hospitable because the mother and her and the rest of the family would get the house ready for the cousins. Mm-hmm. So then knowing how to treat the cousins then made it easier to know how to treat strangers. So by the time she was 15 years old, she'll have had experience entertaining the guests. She would have helped change diapers and babies, and she would have gotten validated for how good she was taking care of the children and have other people do the same. Take a girl today, the husband, the guys that she might like, is probably hoping she has a good job, is concerned with what she does for work. There won't be any girls on the street that are wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. It's almost viewed, because it's happened, is why it's viewed this way, should be viewed as somebody that's just using the guy for money. We have laws that say if you're a guy, if you marry a stay-at-home girl, then you have to pay all of the child support. Whereas if you marry a girl that makes as much money as you pay practically no child support. Mm-hmm. So if someone was to get divorced, it becomes a huge liability. Mm-hmm. Same girl would have, society would be afraid to have her take care of kids. They'd call it child abuse. So she had no idea, she'd have no experience, watching a baby overnight. Most parents probably would not have their 8-year-old daughter change diapers for them like they did in the 60s. And also, housing costs are so high that if she meets a guy that she falls in love with, they probably can't just move into a house, unless their parents are really rich or something,
right,
or dead, inherit the house, one or the other, right? And so part of the reason that I think that we don't have traditional families is because some of your feelings, I think, are trained. Like your mother teaches you manners. So if people aren't expressing love to the kids, then the kids don't know how to express love to each other. If people aren't nurturing the kids, then the kids don't know how to nurture other people. So then you say, okay, what are we being trained to do, right? We're being trained to promote an image. I think a lot of the parents, through insecurity, they look at any flaw in their children as a negative mark on themselves. So if their kid does great in sports, then they want to post pictures on Facebook. This is my son who is the #1 basketball player. People put these signs up on their lawn every June saying, my kid just graduated from high school, so the fact that I can brag about that means I'm a good parent, right? Mm-hmm. And so what they're doing is they're promoting their image out of insecurity about themselves. And what this does is it trains the kid to promote their image because their parents are valuing the kid based on the image. So everybody's trying to become like a mini celebrity, and then they're justifying themselves. So then when they get in a relationship, if something goes wrong, then they look for validations from other people to validate their feelings. And so this is why a lot of them aren't interested in relationships. And then they're also looking for relationships that promote a pop culture positive image. Mm-hmm. So they're saying like on most dating sites, 80% of the guys are ignored. So the girls are looking for a guy that has a specific height, that has a specific income, a specific look, and they're looking for somebody that would help them achieve a good social image. So they're looking for a guy that promotes this image. Mm-hmm. So if he's like a really good athlete, then it could mean that they're a great girl because they got the captain of the football team. Or if they're somebody that other girls like, then they look for that. And then guys do this to a lesser degree, but one advantage that guys have is that they're not as picky, and so they might feel that just having a decent girlfriend is good for their image. And so it's not as, plus girls were the nurturers of society, so that nurturing now is channeled into the things that create connection and fun, and then those things are moved into social media. And then so then if you're looking for an image that's popular, you're going against the norm of what Jesus says. So Jesus says, enter into the straight gate, for broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. Straight is not the thing that makes you look good on Instagram or TikTok.
Right.
If you want to get a lot of views, then you want to do what other people are doing to become popular. And then also it says it's easier for the camel to go out through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Or an interesting point is that your social image is not necessarily a reflection of who you are emotionally. Mm-hmm. So when I was teaching this yesterday, like take this singer Ariana Grande. Use her as not to knock on her. She's probably the most talented singer in the world, right? Nobody that we know, nobody that we see, practically nobody in the world has a greater value social image than Ariana Grande. She has the number one movie. She can become a movie star if she wants. She can sing what she wants. She can sing every form of music known to man. She's pretty. She's talented, right? Okay, the reason I pick her, though, is that she's recently divorced. She's lost all kinds of weight. She's had psychiatric issues, and she's had problems with drugs, okay? Well, on a personal level, those things aren't really the greatest thing, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason I use this as an example is that we're all obsessing over a social image. Look at Ariana Grande. You got two extremes with her. She's got the greatest social image, and she may not be the greatest person to connect with emotionally, mm-hmm. right?
Right.
So your social image is not necessarily a perfect reflection of who you are, and it also doesn't allow for any uniqueness or any differences or any growth in relationships. Because we are obsessing over what promotes a social image, we then get caught up in things, in people that are different. Mm-hmm. So in the past, when they had the famous philosophers, the Greek philosophers like Plato, right? No one said, well, gee, he's saying exactly what I've always thought. I like him. You typically viewed wisdom to be something that was different than the norm. Mm-hmm. So you may not have been following the straight gate to the degree that Jesus said in the world, because you had to be separated from the world even in a good time. But I think the principles of something unique and different were valued, whereas today, now that the falling away, if you take the influence of pop culture and you mingle it with the fear culture, then it's created this soup of mess where people do not want to look bad for not being popular, and then they're training themselves to promote an image while not training themselves to understand love, affection, how to treat people, how to value goodness, how to reciprocate feelings. Those things have nothing to do with your social image. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you, the example that I gave, I like her, nothing against her, but Ariana Grande, she's probably nowhere near as gifted on love, nurturing, and virtue as she is on how to choreograph and how to hit the perfect note, or what's cool, what's not cool, how to pose, how to smile, how to talk to strangers, how to treat her fans, how to promote an album, how to conduct herself in an interview. She probably has all that stuff down. I doubt there's a human being on this planet that has a greater talent than she does. Mm-hmm. But yet her personal life is a mess.
Right.
So I submit to you, I don't think people are focusing on their personal life. I think they're just focusing on the image. Mm-hmm. And the people in their life, they're valuing them based on the degree that it supports a social image. And a social image is not 100% real. I guarantee you, I guarantee you none of my workers know who I am the way you guys do.
Right.
Okay? Because when we're working, we're not really being ourselves. It's not that we're being fake. Right. Like I am who I am at work, right?
Right.
But I'm not necessarily talking about my deep feelings.
Right. You're there for a purpose to get a job done.
Right. So because the purpose is getting the job done, then my inner character, my inner feelings mm-hmm. are not relevant to the job.
Right.
So therefore, you can know a little bit about a person from a social image. Like you can tell how attractive they are. Although nowadays that's become less true because photos are photoshopped and stuff. But for the most part, you can tell how attractive someone is. You can tell if someone's smart or not. And you can get a decent degree over some parts of their character, but the core of a person, I don't believe you can know from a social image. In the example that I gave, Ariana Grande, we don't really know her personal image. So, I'm making speculation based on things that we do know, but reality is we don't really know her.
Right.
But then every girl wants a social image equal to hers, or a guy would want what Brad Pitt used to have, or whoever, Harry Styles or whatever, whoever's, the popular guy now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what good is it to value your life based on a part of your life that isn't even comprehended or understood, and it's not really the deepest part of who you are as a person? But then if we're valuing money over God, then we're actually putting the shallow parts of our existence over the deeper things. And then because of greed, then the basic necessities are getting more expensive, which then fuels people having to work more and more. Now, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do think if we were in a Christian age and people were helping each other and not focusing so much on career, there wouldn't be as much consumerism, there wouldn't be as big a demand for products, and there wouldn't be all the suing that creates all the regulations, that creates all the costs. Things would be cheaper, people would have more time, and people would understand feelings more. But probably our restaurants wouldn't be as good, our cars wouldn't be as good, and our airports would not be as good. But the rest of our life would be a lot better.
Yeah, right.
And so I guess you could say this concludes our study on the falling away. So, dear God, I pray that everyone here learns to take these words seriously, understands that they live in a falling away, and try to overcome it before it's too late. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.